Hi, it's Tracy Baker for Baker Gets Cooking, and today's show is going to be a 3-cheese spinach roll. So it's kind of like a Greek spinach pie or spanakopita, the little triangles made with phyllo dough. But we're just going to make one big roll, like a jelly roll, and a portion would be a slice of that jelly roll. So it tastes very similar. It's got a little bit of some different ingredients that it would be traditional in spinach pie. The 3 cheeses are ricotta, parmesan, and feta. Parmesan, ricotta, and feta cheese. So it has kind of a Greek influence, but it's a slight variation. So first we're going to start off with sautéing a half of a white onion that's been diced. We're just going to, medium-low, going to sweat that until they become translucent. So it takes, 5 minutes or so, something like that. So we'll just let that go. I've sprinkled a little bit of salt on there, mixed it up, and we're just going to let it cook it on medium-low heat until it's translucent. Now when the onions are almost done cooking, when they're almost translucent, I'm just going to put in about a clove's worth of garlic. This is frozen garlic, chopped frozen garlic. You can find this interesting and very useful tip on the anti-diced chicken thighs video. I love it. It's a time saver and it's always in my freezer, and I just have to break off a chunk and put it in my dish. So I'm just going to cook that garlic a little bit with the onion just to kind of cook off the raw taste a little bit. And that's just about done cooking. The other one of the ingredients that goes in here is 250 grams of spinach. Now I've used frozen spinach here. You can use fresh spinach if you want. Just keep in mind that if you use fresh spinach, you're going to start with a huge volume, and it's going to be, this is about maybe a cup of chopped spinach. I've squeezed it out with my hands really well to get all of the water out of it. It's really important that you get as much water out of the spinach as possible, or else you're going to have a soggy roll. So I've squeezed it out and dried it with a paper towel and chopped it into little bits. And just about when this onion is almost done, I'm going to put the spinach in there. Not that it needs to cook at all, but it helps to evaporate every bit of liquid. So I'm just going to push my onions to the side and plunk that spinach right down in the center, and I'm just going to saute it for a couple of minutes just to evaporate any water. And just for the last couple of minutes of cooking, I'm just going to add about a half a cup of green onions that have been chopped, and I'm just going to mix that in and just cook them for, a minute or two, and that's it. Okay, that looks great. The mixture is nice and dry, and I'm just going to put it in this bowl, and I'm going to let it cool for a little bit. Because there's cheese that is going into here, I don't want all the cheese to melt. Just push that around to let it cool faster. So we'll be back in a few minutes to add the rest of the ingredients. My spinach and onions and garlic have cooled, and we're going to combine all of the rest of the ingredients. So I have a cup of ricotta cheese that I have drained. So again, you don't want this to be wet at all. So in that goes. And then I have 3/4 of a cup of chopped feta, crumbled feta. And that goes in, and then about 1/4 of a cup of Parmesan cheese. So Parmesan is salty, and so is the feta. So we are going to put a little salt in here, but we're not going to put a ton because it is a pretty salty dish because of the cheese. This is a 1/4 cup of chopped fresh dill. If you didn't have fresh dill, you could use, a teaspoon of dried. And we have a 1/4 cup of chopped pine nuts. Now pine nuts are from a pine, hence the name. These are toasted just over in a dry pan over a low flame for till they're golden. Watch them carefully because they'll turn black in a matter of seconds, and they're very expensive. They're worth their weight in gold. If you wanted a less expensive alternative, you could use chopped toasted blanched almonds. That would be fine, or you could just leave the nuts out altogether. Walnuts would be okay in this too. It just kind of gives an extra dimension of flavor. and some extra protein. And then I have a lemon, and I'm going to grate the zest. This is a microplane. I'm going to grate the zest of about half of this lemon into our dish here. So it's a nice kind of lemony zip. That's great. And then half the juice of a lemon. The juice of half a lemon. This is my citrus press. I love it. It's like a big garlic press, except it's for citrus, limes, lemons, oranges. And so you just put it in there and gently squeeze. And it keeps all the pits and all the pulp right in that little bowl. And you just get the juice. My new favorite thing. Okay, then we're going to just put a little bit of salt. A 1/4 teaspoon or so of salt. And some freshly ground pepper. And then we have a kind of a subtle touch. This is freshly grated nutmeg. And nutmeg is typically used with sweet foods like cookies and cakes and that kind of thing. But this is a savory dish. And sometimes when you're using cheese, you'll find that they add addition of nutmeg. Cheese or really rich dishes, you'll find a little bit of nutmeg in there. Now it's not going to be a very strong nutmeg taste, and you don't want a ton, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon. Just enough to kind of give it a little extra something. And then a couple of eggs. And our filling is just about done. Okay, so we're just going to mix that together. Okay, that's our filling. I'm just going to set that aside and we'll work with our phyllo dough. Okay, so the next step is to prepare the phyllo dough so that we can put the filling in. Now, this is just a store-bought phyllo dough, house brand. They're all pretty much the same. They don't have very many ingredients, and they're kind of normal ingredients in that I can pronounce them all. So there's not any preservatives or awful stuff in here. So pretty basic ingredients. It's easy to work with. The big thing about phyllo dough is that it dries out really quickly, so you have to keep it covered. Now I have my phyllo dough on this cookie sheet, and I have a plastic wrap on top of the phyllo dough, and then I have a wet tea towel on top of that. And you need to do that, especially if you're just starting to work with it, because it will dry out very quickly, and then it's hard to work with after it dries out. So you can do this. Once you get proficient at it, you can, if you work with it very quickly, then you don't need to. But to start with, I like this. And I don't know if I'm going to get interrupted by my children, so I think it's a good idea, a good thing to do. So I have my baking sheet with some parchment on it, and I'm just going to grab my first sheet of phyllo. So it's very thin, comes in sheets like that. Don't worry if it has a little bit of a tear in it. It's okay, because it's all going to be rolled up. You won't notice it, and it'll be okay. And so I'm going to cover that up while I work with this one. I have a couple of tablespoons of melted butter and a couple of tablespoons of olive oil combined. Now, because phyllo dough doesn't have any fat added to it, this is the only fat that you're really going to be consuming, other than the cheese, of course. But, you know, compared to regular pastry, it's pretty low in fat. So it's a good thing to use if you're watching your fat intake. And I'm just going to brush that kind of liberally over the top. Now, I guess I should talk about thawing. Phyllo dough is, you buy it frozen, and I think it's better to thaw it out overnight in the fridge, and then you can use it the next day. And it can be refrozen. So for this recipe, we're going to use half of a package. So whatever half of your package is, whether it's 8 sheets or 9 sheets or 10 sheets, whatever half, that works good. So you can use this one package for 2 rolls. I'm just going to put the next layer right on top. Cover it up. This takes a little time, but it's not hard. Okay, so I've buttered all of my sheets, and now we're ready for the filling part. So we're just going to spoon the mixture into one of the ends of the phyllo dough. It smells cheesy and lemony, and it smells awesome. Okay. Now I've saved a little butter and oil mixture for the top of the dough. And then we're just going to roll it up. Like that. So I'm going to put the seam so that it's at the bottom. We're going to turn it so that it's like so. Now the ends are open. I'm just going to kind of gently pinch them closed so that we don't get too much of the filling seeping out. And then I'm just going to brush what's left of my butter and oil over the top, and that'll make a nice brown, yummy crust. You know, one very important step that you must do before you put it in the oven is make slices on the top. If you don't make the slices before it's cooked, when you try to cut this roll, it ends up just kind of shattering and you get phyllo dough everywhere. So you just make slices in the top, not all the way through the whole roll, but through the entire layer of phyllo. And so I make them like, 1.5 inches, 2 inches apart. We're just going to make slices, and then that's our portions. So when it comes to serving, we just have to cut through the rest of the dough, and that roll is a serving. It also creates some venting holes so that our filling can cook properly. I'm just going to squish the sides together a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so that's our spinach roll. I'm going to put it in a 350-degree oven for about 30 to 40 minutes, and we'll have a look at it when it comes out. The spinach roll's out of the oven, and oh my gosh, it smells so good in here. We're going to plate up now. Just cut this little slice here. So you see how nicely it cuts because we made those pre-cuts. Nice crispy bottom, nice golden brown. This is sat out of the oven for about 20 minutes. You need to let it sit because molten cheese doesn't cut very well. So you need to let it sit for a little bit. It's best actually if you serve it kind of warm, not piping hot, but warm, or even room temperature is really good too. So I'm just going to have a little bite. Oh, and the phyllo is nice and crispy and flaky, and so, oh, it looks so good. Really lemony, and I can taste the dill and the saltiness of the feta. So good. I would serve this with some freshly cut greens dressed with just a little bit of oil and vinegar, or freshly sliced tomato. If the tomatoes are in season, it would go perfectly with this. So can't wait to serve this. My family is chomping at the bit to eat, and so I hope this works for you. Hope you enjoy it. I spit a little bit there, sorry. Excuse me. The recipe will be on the link to the blog below, and hope this works for you. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.